Greetings. Today we are going to explore some very important aspects of our justice system. Things that may sound technical at first, but they are deeply connected to our rights, our voice, and our power as citizens of this great nation. Together, let us begin by understanding a powerful legal tool that empowers the common people like us to seek justice. This tool is known as public interest litigation, or simply we call it as PIL. It is a beautiful example of how the law listens to not just to the rich or the powerful, but also to the poor, the voiceless, and the oppressed. Through this PIL, even one concerned citizen can knock on the doors of the highest court in the land, not for personal benefit, but for the greater good of our society. As we move further, we will also understand the structure and responsibilities of the different benches in our judiciary. The single bench, the division bench, and the constitution bench. We will see how different matters are assigned, how urgent issues are handled during vacations, and how serious constitutional questions are taken up by larger benches. We will also touch on important procedures like review petitions, curative petitions, and even contempt of court, showing us how the court system works with both flexibility and discipline. So, let us walk together on this journey today, not just to learn legal rules, but to grow as responsible and aware citizens. Because when we understand the constitution and the jurisdiction of our courts, we don't just gain knowledge, we gain the power to protect justice, both for ourselves and for our society. Let us start with the public interest litigation, or simply PIL, public interest litigation. Every citizen in our country, they should know about it because it gives us, the people, the strength to stand up for what is right and what is just. Let us ask ourselves, have we ever seen injustice around us and felt helpless? Perhaps children playing in garbage heaps in a neglected slum area, or a tribal woman walking 10 kilometers every day just to fetch drinking water, or a situation where government officials, they ignore the cries of ordinary people and only listen to those with the power and wealth. What do we do when we witness such injustice? Do we stay silent? Do we close our eyes and walk away? No, we don't. We rise, we speak, we take a stand. And one of the most powerful and peaceful ways to raise our voice in a democracy is through public interest litigation. PIL. PIL is a unique and noble form of legal action. Unlike regular court cases where only the victim can file a complaint, but a PIL, it allows any concerned citizen to approach the court on behalf of those who cannot. We do not need to be the ones suffering directly. If we see injustice happening to others, whether it is to the poor or to the children, to the animals or to the environment or to prisoners, we can file a PIL. We do it not for personal gain, but for the benefit of our society. That is why it is called public interest litigation, because it serves the interest of the public, especially the voiceless and the powerless. This powerful idea began to grow in India during the 1980s when visionary judges like Justice P.N. Bhagwati and Justice P.R. Krishna Iyer, they realized that the poor and the marginalized, they were unable to access the courts. They lacked money, they lacked legal knowledge, and they lacked awareness of their rights. To open the gates of justice, the judges declared that even a simple letter Even a simple letter written on behalf of poor person, it could be treated as a legal petition. Just imagine that a letter written out of concern for someone else's suffering, it could become a case in court. That was the birth of a revolution in Indian legal history. And that revolution was named as pill. And how powerful is one single pill? It can move mountains. The pill can move mountains. Because of a pill, child labor in factories, it was banned by the Supreme Court. Another pill, it ensured that millions of children in government schools, they would receive hot midday meals every day. Yet another pill, it brought national attention to the pollution of the Ganga Yamuna rivers. The basic rights of under-trial prisoners who had been rotting in jail for years without a verdict, they were protected through pills. The power is real and the impact is lasting. It is the power of law being used for justice, not just for the privileged, but for everyone. What is most beautiful is that anyone can file a pill. We do not have to be a lawyer, a politician, or a celebrity. A student, a homemaker, a retired person, a farmer, a teacher, an NGO worker, a journalist, anyone with a kind heart and a strong sense of justice, they can step forward. They can step forward to file a petition. The courts have made it easy and accessible. We do not even need to file the case in complicated legal language. If the matter is serious and genuine, we can even write a letter to the judge. If the court is convinced that the issue affects public interest, the letter itself can become a pill. That is the power of our democracy, where one voice, no matter how small, the one voice can be heard by the highest court in the land. We must remember that India faces many challenges: poverty, inequality, corruption, pollution, discrimination, and more. We all see these problems. Many of us talk about them. But this pill gives us something more than words. It gives us the power to act. It gives us the courage to fight for the truth peacefully and legally. It gives us a way to become protectors of justice, even if we have no money or legal training. However, this power comes with responsibility. Pill is not a shortcut to fame or attention. It is not a toy. It is not to be misused for personal revenge or selfish motives. The courts have made it clear, if someone files a false pill with dishonest intentions, they will be punished. Pill must be used only with honesty, sincerity, and a true spirit of service. It is a sacred tool. It is a Gandhian weapon, non-violent, strong, and full of purpose. Pill has changed the very nature of our judiciary. In the past, the courts felt like closed temples, where only the rich and educated could find shelter. But today, because of this pill, the courts are more like open homes of justice, where even the poor, the uneducated, and the unheard, they can hope for protection. Through this pill, the lives of women and children, they have been improved. Environmental destruction has been challenged. Corruption has been exposed. And the rights of tribal communities, rights of workers, and the rights of prisoners, they have been defended. Even street vendors and slum dwellers, they have received legal recognition and dignity thanks to the power of pill. This is what true democracy looks like. A system where the government is not above the people, but answerable to the people. Where the law is not only for the privileged, but for every citizen. Pill reminds us that we are not helpless. We are not helpless. We are not weak. We are strong citizens of a great nation. We have the right to question, to challenge, and to improve the system. Sometimes a single letter can open the eyes of the nation. Sometimes a small action can bring justice to thousands. Sometimes a quiet voice from a small village, it can echo all the way to the Supreme Court. That is the power of public interest litigation. And that power belongs not to one person, not to one group, but to every citizen of our nation. Now, let us understand what kind of issues truly come under public interest litigation or dispute, and what kind do not fall under this bill category. This is important because while we have a powerful tool in our hands, we must also use it in the right way, with clarity and with responsibility. When we talk about matters of public interest, we are talking about problems that affect many people, not just one individual, but entire communities, vulnerable groups, or even our environment. These are situations where we, as citizens, we feel the pain of others and we feel the responsibility to speak up for justice, even if we are not personally affected by that. For example, if we see bonded labor, where poor people, they are forced to work like slaves to repay a small debt. That is a serious issue of public interest. If children are being neglected, if children are being abused or denied their rights, we cannot ignore it. That too becomes a matter that concerns all of us. If casual laborers are being exploited or if they are not being paid their rightful wages, we must stand for them, not just when it happens to one individual, but when it is widespread practice harming many workers. There are also cases where people from scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and economically backward classes, they are harassed, they are tortured, or they are mistreated. If this happens through police misuse or discrimination by poor villagers, then it becomes a matter of public concern. It becomes our duty to raise our voice and seek justice, not just for them, but for the dignity of our entire society. Bill also applies to issues that threaten our common resources and our shared future, like environmental pollution, ecological destruction, deforestation, destruction of wildlife, and the poisoning of food and water. When we allow these dangers to continue, we are not just hurting nature, we are hurting ourselves, we are hurting our children, and we are hurting the generations to come. Even things like protecting our heritage, preserving our culture, and safeguarding ancient monuments and traditions, it can come under the public interest because they belong to all of us. They belong to all of us. And in moments of great tragedy, like communal riots, when innocent people suffer and they need support, bill can be a way to bring their suffering to the notice of the court and demand proper action. So, when we file a bill, we must ask ourselves, does this issue affect the lives of many? Does it involve injustice against the poor, the vulnerable, or to the environment? If the answer is yes, then it falls under the public interest and it must be taken seriously. But we must also understand what does not qualify as public interest. Not every complaint or not every problem is suitable for a bill. For example, if someone is being personally threatened or harassed by a private person, that is a personal matter, not a public one. Similarly, if you are asking for an investigation by an agency other than the local police in a personal dispute. Or if you are requesting police protection for ourselves, these are private problems that must be addressed through regular legal channels, not through bill. Disputes between landlords and tenants, service-related complaints like job transfers or suspensions, admissions to medical or engineering college, or requests for a partial hearing in a personal court cases. These are also considered private matters. They do not affect the broader public, so they cannot be treated as bills. If we try to bring such personal concerns before the court as bills, we are misusing the purpose of this tool and we risk being ignored or even bothered by the court. Whenever a petition is sent by post, like a letter to the court, it is not accepted blindly. It goes through a proper process of checking. It is carefully read and examined based on certain fixed guidelines. Only those letters or petitions that truly deal with matters of public interest, they are shown to the judge, who is specially appointed to look into such bills. This is why we must be careful and honest when we think of filing a bill. It is not just about writing a letter. It is about taking responsibility for the truth. We must think, we must feel, and we must act with sincerity and wisdom. When we do this, we are not just using a law. We are building a better nation. We are helping to create a society that listens, that protects, and that cares for everyone equally. That is the real spirit of public interest litigation. That is our role as responsible citizens. Even when a case affects only one individual, it can sometimes be accepted by the Supreme Court under Article number 32 of our Constitution. This happens when the matter is extremely serious and it involves the violation of fundamental human rights. For example, if you come across a complaint where someone is being tortured, where someone is being harassed or even killed while in police custody or in jail, that is not just a personal issue. It shakes our faith in justice. That person may be alone, but the pain is deep and the consequences are big. In such cases, the court can treat it as a repetition and take necessary action. Similarly, if a woman is facing atrocities such as dowry harassment, domestic violence, rape, murder, or kidnapping, her voice must be heard. These are not small matters. These are attacks on human dignity and safety. When such petitions come to the court, they are not brushed aside. They are taken seriously and justice is sought. Complaints about the denial of family pensions, which many elderly people or widows they rely on for survival, can also be accepted. And if someone goes to the police to file a case and the police refuse to register it, that too can be brought to the attention of the court through a writ petition. These are examples. These are examples of how even individual suffering is recognized when it reflects a larger failure of justice. In these types of cases, before the court registers it as a writ petition, a report is usually collected from the concerned authority. Because it helps the court understand the facts clearly. Only then it is this matter placed before the judge who decides whether it should move forward. This process ensures that while the courts are open to genuine grievances, they are also careful and responsible in how they respond. And what happens when even the highest court dismisses a case, is there any hope left? Yes, there is. There is one more rare but powerful option called a curative petition. If we feel that the decision made by the court was a serious mistake, or if it has caused great injustice, we can file a curative petition. This is not done often and it is allowed only in very exceptional situations. The purpose of the curative petition is to prevent the misuse of the court process and to correct a great wrong if it has occurred. This special part, it was made possible because of a case called Rupa Ashokpura, this is Ashokpura and others, in the year 2000. That case helped the court understand that justice must always have room to correct itself. All of this shows us that our Constitution and our Supreme Court, they are not just bodies of law. They are guardians of justice. They are there to listen to the unheard, to help the helpless and to correct what is wrong. We, the citizens of India, we must understand this great system and use it wisely, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who needs a voice. Justice is not only for the powerful, it is for every one of us. When we know our rights and stand up for them, we are not only protecting ourselves, we are strengthening our democracy, and that is the true power of our Constitution. In our great democracy, the Constitution has given our courts a clear structure and system for handling justice. And within our Supreme Court, different types of benches, meaning different groups of judges, they handle different kinds of legal matters. One of these is called a single bench. A single bench, which means a single judge sitting in a chamber who handles specific matters that do not usually require the full court or a larger bench. This system makes our justice process quicker and more efficient, especially for procedural matters. Let us understand what kinds of issues a single judge can decide. These are generally matters that are procedural or administrative in nature. For example, if an advocate wants permission to withdraw from a case, or if someone wants to change their advocate, this request can be handled by a single judge. If we have applied to the court as an indigent person, someone who cannot afford to pay court fee and later wish to compromise or discontinue the appeal, even that application can go to a single judge. Similarly, if we want to add or remove a party from a case, or if someone wishes to intervene in a matter because they are affected by it, a single judge can decide on it. There are also requests related to managing how cases are heard. Suppose there are multiple issues in one case that may cause confusion or embarrassment if tried together. Then the single judge can allow those to be tried separately. If someone files a case that has no legal ground, the single judge has the power to reject the claim. When one side has not submitted their written statement or defense on time, the single judge can move the case forward for judgment by default. Sometimes the court may ask for more clarity. If the case file is not clear enough, the judge can order the party to submit a better statement or provide more details. This helps in fair judgment. If someone asks for changes in their legal documents or pleads for more time to make such changes, that too can be decided by a single judge. applications for reviewing the costs decided by the court, a refund of fees, or seeking a decision on who should pay the cost. These are all fall under the single bench's powers. The single judge also handles applications for practical things like issuing summons or notices, again combining multiple appeals into one hearing, or allowing third parties to see documents or collect copies if there is a good reason. Even when someone who is not a party to the case wants their documents back, or if we need to appoint a guardian for a minor or a person with a mental illness, these are managed and legislated. There are also matters of bail for those in jail for offences with the punishment of up to 7 years. Such bail applications, they can be reviewed by a single judge. If someone has been sentenced and wants a stay or pause on that sentence while their appeal is being heard, these two can be looked into by the judge. Sometimes an accused person in custody needs to be brought to court for their appeal. The application for that is also handled here. In certain cases, when there is complete agreement from all sides to withdraw an appeal, petition or suit, a single judge can grant that request. Also, if someone fails to surrender as ordered, the matter can be brought before the judge again for further direction. When we talk about cases getting delayed because someone has not paid court fees or not submitted required documents, the single judge also has the authority to give extension of time or exemption in deserving situations. There is also the power to accept substitutions in a case. For example, if someone involved in the case has died and needs to be replaced by the legal hire, or if there was a delay in applying for the change, or even in setting aside a situation where the case was stopped because of such delay, the judge can also allow appeals or petitions to be withdrawn if all the parties agree or if the other party has not appeared. All these responsibilities may sound like small technical points, but they are very important in keeping the justice system running smoothly. This entire framework, it shows us how detailed, how thoughtful, and how organized our legal system is. Our constitution, it ensures that even the smallest requests and issues are given a place and procedure in our courts. We must remember that justice is not only about big trials or paper treatment. It is also about making sure the process is fair, the process is accessible, and the process is functioning well for every citizen. By understanding how even a single bench functions, we can appreciate the care our system takes to maintain order, to maintain balance, and to maintain fairness. These benches are not just desks in a courtroom. They are doors to justice for people like us. They allow our voices, however small they may seem, to be heard in the highest court of the land. That is the power of our constitution, and that is the strength of our democracy. In our journey of understanding how justice reaches us, even during the holidays, our judicial system, it shows incredible commitment and responsibility. There is never a pause when it comes to protecting the rights and lives of the people of our country. That's why even during the summer vacations or even during the winter holidays, our Supreme Court has a system in place to handle urgent matters without delay. This is where the role of a single bench becomes even more significant. especially when a judge sits alone to hear important and urgent cases during notification. As per the powers, as per the powers given under the rules, the Chief Justice of India can decide that certain urgent cases be heard by one judge sitting alone during the holidays. This judge is called the vacation judge. While many of us take rest during vacations, our courts, they continue to work for our protection when the matter is serious and cannot wait. The vacation judge has special responsibilities. Along with the usual powers of a single judge sitting in chambers, this vacation judge can also take up cases that are urgent and require immediate attention, but only if they do not involve deep constitutional concerns. Let us imagine someone's life. Let us imagine someone's freedom or livelihood is at risk, and a case needs to be heard immediately. This is when the vacation judge steps in. For example, if we are seeking special permission to appeal in a very urgent matter and we need interim relief like a temporary stay or protection, the vacation judge can take up that request. However, if the case involves a major question about interpreting the constitution, it will not be decided during the vacation because that needs deeper examination by a larger bench. The vacation judge can also stop the enforcement of a court order or judgment temporarily in civil cases if there is a strong and urgent reason. If someone is going to be evicted or their property is in danger due to a legal order, such a matter can be heard during the holidays. The same applies to criminal matters. If proceedings are going on in a similar case and they need to be passed for bail reason, the vacation judge, he can handle that request. There are also times when a case needs to be moved from one court to another, maybe for fairness, security, or convenience. In criminal cases, if there is an urgent request to transfer a case from one state to another, the vacation judge can decide on that. Similarly, in civil matters, cases can be transferred if the situation demands quick action. All of this is possible even during holidays, showing us how our courts never turn their back on justice, no matter what the calendar says. Even when people file petitions under Article 32 of our Constitution, which allows us to go directly to the Supreme Court if our fundamental rights are violated, the vacation judge can take up those cases if they are urgent and don't involve big constitutional debates. And even if the case does not raise such deep questions, the judge can still take the first step by issuing a notice and starting the process. In some situations, urgent transfer of cases under Article 139A of the Constitution, it is also possible where a matter being heard in one high court needs to be moved to the Supreme Court or another high court for better coordination or better justice. All of this shows us something very powerful. That justice in our country does not sleep. The courts are always open for those in urgent need. We must feel proud and reassured that our judiciary is built with such care, where systems are in place to act swiftly and protect our rights even when the rest of the country is on a break. This system is not just about rules and procedures. It reflects the spirit of service. It reflects the spirit of responsibility towards every citizen. It tells us that our justice system is not only strong but also compassionate. It is ever ready to help, ever alert to act, and ever committed to fairness. And as responsible citizens, it is our duty to understand this system, respect it, and when needed, we have to use it with honesty and courage for the good of all. Most of the time, a case is heard by a division bench, which means at least two judges sit together to understand the facts and arguments before giving a decision. This is done under the guidance of the Chief Justice of India. This kind of arrangement, it makes sure that justice is not dependent on the thinking of just one person. Instead, when two minds come together, we are more likely to get a fair and balanced judgment. It encourages discussion, careful thinking, and protects the rights of everyone involved. Now, there are some cases that are extremely serious, especially those where the High Court has confirmed or given a death sentence. In such situations, our Constitution takes an even more cautious approach. It ensures that these cases are not heard by just two judges, but by a bench of at least three judges. This way, when someone's life is on the line, the decision is not rushed or taken lightly. It is the responsibility of the judiciary to ensure that if a person is to be punished with the harshest penalty, every angle, every doubt, and every piece of evidence is looked into deeply. We can take comfort in knowing that our system is designed to be this careful and thorough. Even during the court vacations, the Chief Justice has the power to call a division bench when an urgent matter needs immediate hearing. This shows us that justice does not stop when the holidays begin, whether it is a regular working day or a vacation period. If a situation arises when delay could cause injustice or harm our courts, step into act. When we look at even more complex cases, those that involve important questions about interpreting our Constitution, then the Constitution bench, it comes into act. This bench at least has 5 judges. Why so many? Because these are not just ordinary legal matters. These are cases that can affect the meaning and future of our fundamental rights, the powers of our government, and the very structure of our democracy. That is why under Article number 145 of 3, such major issues must be handled by a larger group of judges. It ensures depth of thought and a collective wisdom. Similarly, if a case is about the election of the president or the vice president of our country, it is also given to a constitution bench of 5 judges, as there are matters that affect the nation's leadership and stability. Sometimes a case may not start out as a constitutional issue, but as the hearing continues, it may become clear that it touches upon some deep constitutional question. When that happens, the division bench can decide that it is better for a larger bench to hear the act. They refer it to the Chief Justice, who then forms a suitable larger bench to take over the case. This again shows how flexible and careful our system is. It respects the nature of each case and ensures that the right people handle it. Also, when a smaller bench, say of 2 judges, it feels that a case should be decided by more judges because of its importance or complexity. They don't go ahead on their own. They send the matter to the Chief Justice who decides how many judges should look into it. Even in serious criminal cases, if a smaller bench thinks the accused should be given the death penalty, they do not deliver that judgment alone. They refer the matter to the Chief Justice, who will make sure that at least 3 judges hear it and take the final. After a case has been referred to a larger bench and the bench has given its opinion, the case comes back to the Chief Justice, who then decides which bench should hear the matter next. This entire process makes sure that justice is delivered in a step-by-step, well-organized way. Every level of care is taken so that no person suffers because of haste, confusion or oversight. As citizens, when we know how carefully each bench is formed and how seriously our judges take their roles, we can trust that our voice will be heard and our rights protected. We are not alone in our search for justice. The law stands with us, the system supports us, and the judges, through this strong bench structure, they ensure that we receive justice that is fair, just, and wise. This is the strength of our democracy and the greatness of our Constitution. In our journey to uphold justice and protect our rights, we must understand that sometimes even the highest courts, they can revisit their own decisions. This is not a sign of weakness, but of great strength and humility in our legal system. It means that when we feel something important was misunderstood in a judgment, we have the right to request a second. This is done through a review petition. When we file a review petition under the rules of the Supreme Court and Article number 137 of the Constitution, our application is usually sent to the same judge or the bench that originally gave the decision. This helps because the judges are already familiar with the case. But if any judge has retired or is not available, then the Chief Justice will assign another suitable judge or bench to look into the matter. It ensures that even when changes happen in the court, our right to a fair review is still protected. Usually, review petitions are decided without any oral arguments. That means the judges quietly read and they decide the case without holding a hearing in open court. But in special situations, especially when someone's life is at stake, like in death penalty cases, our Supreme Court has made it clear that an oral hearing must take place. In the famous 2014 case of Muhammad Arif Ashfaq, the court ruled that in review petitions related to death penalties, the hearing must happen openly so that every possible angle can be carefully considered. But we also need to understand that the review process is not endless. If we file a review and if it is rejected or completed, we cannot ask for another review in the same manner. That is the rule. It helps prevent misuse of the process and keeps the court's time free for new and deserving cases. Now, some matters are handled in Lok Adalat. These are people's courts. Lok Adalat are people courts. They are designed to settle disputes quickly and peacefully, often through compromise. If we feel that an award or order passed by a Lok Adalat needs clarification, change or review, we can apply it. The same bench in a future Lok Adalat, they will locate our request. If any of those members are not available, then the Chief Justice steps in and he forms a new Lok Adalat bench. And if no compromise can be reached, the matter is then passed to a division bench or assigned as per Chief Justice direction. It shows that even outside the main courtrooms, the spirit of justice and fairness, it continues to guide every step. In very rare and exceptional situations, after even the review petition has failed, we have one final chance. This is a curative petition. It is like the last door to justice. But this door does not open easily. A curative petition is first made by the three most senior judges of the Supreme Court, along with those who gave the original judgment. If they are right. They carefully examine whether there is a strong enough reason to reopen the matter. Normally, this is done without oral hearing unless the judges feel that the case deserves a full hearing. If they agree, the case is then listed again for hearing by the same bench, as far as possible. This process shows us how seriously the Supreme Court treats its own responsibility, ensuring that justice is never denied due to a technical error or oversight. There are also practical rules about how ongoing cases are managed. For example, if a case is already partly heard by a particular bench, it should continue with the same judges. If one of them retires or becomes unavailable, then the Chief Justice will take steps to form a new bench so the case can move forward without hearing. And when someone does not follow the judgment of the court, whether it is a civil matter or criminal, a contempt petition can be filed. If the contempt involves ignoring the court's order or breaking a promise made to the court, that case is taken up by the same bench that passed the original order. This helps maintain continuity and seriousness. And if the contempt happens in the courtroom itself, like insulting or disturbing the court's peace, the matter goes directly before the same bench or as directed by the Chief Justice. Above all, these specific rules of the Chief Justice of India, it holds a very special responsibility. At any time, the Chief Justice can decide that a particular type of case, it should be handled by a particular bench. This gives flexibility and it keeps the system running smoothly. What we see in all of this is not just a set of rules. It is a living, working system built to serve justice. It respects both the power of the courts and the rights of the people. It provides many chances for correction, resolution, and growth. As citizens, we can take pride in this system. We can trust that if we speak with honesty, follow the law, and stand up for what is right, our courts will hear us, protect us, if needed, even correct themselves. As we come to the end of today's session, let us take a moment to reflect on what we have learned today. We began by understanding what public interest litigation or PIL truly means, not just as a legal term, but as a powerful tool that gives ordinary people like us the ability to stand up for justice and the rights of others. We saw how PIL has been used to protect the environment, to support the poor, to demand dignity for the oppressed, and to hold authorities accountable. It is one of the strongest ways in which our constitution allows us to speak, not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot be heard. We also took a detailed look at how our court system is structured. We learned learned about the roles and responsibilities of different benches. The single bench, the division bench, and the constitution bench, and how cases are assigned based on their urgency, based on their importance. We explored how serious matters like the interpretation of the constitution, or cases involving the death penalty. They are handled with the greatest care by specially appointed bench. We also understood the importance of reviewing the curative petitions and how justice is continuously refined even after a decision is made. Through this session, we have seen that our judiciary is not just a group of judges and courtrooms. It is a living part of our democracy that serves us hard. When we know our rights, and when we understand how the system works, we become stronger as individuals and as a